This week in the Regency, we have the reason for the Regency. This is from the first week of January in 1812. It's a report from the London Star about just how mad the king is this week. I'll read it to you. His Majesty's mental condition is stated to be that of continued delirium without any mixture of violence or any access of frenzy. The hopes of ultimate recovery are very faint, but His Majesty's delusions are of the happiest kind. He imagines that he holds converse with a superior order of beings, and his imaginary condition is altogether that of a sort of heavenly situation. In point of bodily health, His Majesty is as well as could be wished. He eats, drinks, and sleeps as well as the most healthy person of his age could be expected to do, takes such exercise as his situation admits, and is in every respect likely to live several years in his present state. So that's good news and it's bad news. The Regency had begun at this point. It started in 1811 when it became clear that King George III, which is the king that we're talking about in that newspaper report, had gone completely mad. And that was the term used. We now think that his mental illness was something called porphyria, which is a genetic disease, travels in families, and it is progressive. So he had had episodes before, notably about 10 years previous to this. But then in 1811, it got really bad, and they decided that they needed a regent to take over. And since the Prince of Wales was in fact the heir to the throne, they decided to use him. Prinny, as he was known to the public, was 50 years old at the time the Regency started. So it was not, we have this image of this young, dashing prince taking it. Yeah, no, he was old, he was fat, he was debauched. He was incredibly extravagant, like what would be now millions and millions and millions of pounds in debt. But he was all they had. So none of his brothers were in the slightest bit suitable. And he was, in fact, the heir to the throne. And so they went with him. The last statement about the king will proceed in, for several years still turned out to be true. He didn't die till 1820. And the thing about how much exercise his situation admits, well, they didn't let him go riding. They let him sit in the garden and walk, in the gardens with people watching him, but he wasn't allowed to leave his palace, or indeed the garden of his palace, and his rooms were about all he saw. The end of the Regency happened when the king eventually died of this progressive disease, and the Prince Regent becomes King George IV. So we had in 1811 to 1812, which is the period we're talking about, was a kind of probation. They put the Prince Regent on a sort of probation where he was the regent, but there were all these things Parliament said he couldn't do. And after 12 months, from July of 1811, which is when that act was passed, in July 1812, he was free to do whatever he liked, and he did, basically. So this week in the Regency was all about why the Regency exists. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to find out what happens next week in the Regency.